anak Malaysia. Wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey. Wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey.
1957 bulan 8 kita merdeka.
Setelah dijajah oleh orang Inggris,
Kami Kazir dan Portugis.
wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey. Wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey.
Dari Perlis ke kota Kinabalu, rakyat bersatu dan maju.
bumi bertuah, hasil melimpah.
Siapa rajin hidup mewah.
Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey. Wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey.
Melayu, Cina, Iban, India, Kanasan, Portugis pun ada. Semua kaya dengan budaya,
Di bawah kibaran satu bendera.
Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia.
Hujan emas di negeri orang.
hujan batu di negeri kita. Walaupun cantik negeri orang,
Tentunya Malaysia cantik lagi.
Melayu, Cina, Iban, India, Kanasan, Portugis pun ada. Semua kaya dengan budaya, di bawah kibaran satu bendera. Saya anak Malaysia. 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 Wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey. Wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey.
1957 bulan 8 kita merdeka.
Setelah dijajah oleh orang Inggris,
Kami Kazir dan Portugis.
Wow, oh, 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 oh. Hey. Wow, oh, oh, oh,
negeri kita. Walaupun cantik negeri orang,
tentunya Malaysia cantik lagi.
Melayu, Cina, Iban, India, Karasan, Portugis pun ada. Semua kaya dengan budaya, di bawah kibaran satu bendera. Saya anak Malaysia, 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 saya anak Malaysia.
I can hear clearly. Okay, all right.
Saya.
Is somewhere at a Klang municipal event, right? Right? Yes. Okay, so we will be seeing this video throughout for Azri. Am I correct? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. One Nuraini, if you are here, can I hear your voice and also see your visual? Mira, any comments?
I'm still Muhammad here.
I'm
Can you hear me? Hi, morning.
Morning.
Okay.
I
One
can
morning here.
Okay, I can hear you, Muhammad. I cannot see you. Muhammad, Muhammad, Nadia. Can you see me? Hello? Hello? Anusha, can you see me? Yes. Yes. I can see you. Alright. Okay. I'm gonna morning. Morning. Okay. So kita Puan Raini. With everyone.
Happy cinta di hati pada setiap insan kita gabaikan.
agar gemilang mekar di persada.
kita bersama, amanah bangsa junjung selamanya.
Abadikanlah jiwa dan ragamu, teguh sinar cahaya, satukan jiwa.
Marakkan happy cinta di hati pada setiap insan kita gabaikan,
Agar gemilang mekadi bersada, satu langkah, satu hati untukmu berdiri. Di mana bumi dipijak, di situ langit dijunjung.
gunungkan semangat kedua.
Walau di mana saja berada, maklumnya seiringan.
Agar teguh, tulus, ikhlas
Malaysiaku,
Anusha, and I will be your host and moderator for today. Welcome to Mike's webinar series Road to Recovery, Episode 7 Public-Private Partnership, the Funding of Smart City Development. With us today, we have our distinguished panelists. Our first panelist is Mr. Jeffrey John Delmont. He is a senior public-private partnership specialist with the World Bank since 2005, advising globally on infrastructure, finance, and public-private partnership. He is also an author and numerous books and articles on public-private partnership. Our second panelist is Yang Dipertua Town Planner Haja Nuraini Haji Roslan, President of the Subang Jaya Municipal Council. She has served as President of Subang Jaya Municipal Council since 2018, with 20 years diversity experience in urban planning with its focus on sustainable city. Our third panelist is Madam Maslinawati Ahmad. She is the Head of Economic and Research of Group Strategy Planning, Bank Pembangunan Malaysia Berhad. She has 24 years of experience as an economist with well-diverse experience in senior capacity in various organizations covering a multitude subject matters, stakeholders, and deliverables. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Azrin Aris, Director of Central Strategy Economic Region, Telecom Malaysia Berhad. His current focus is to empower Malaysia state government and local council towards digitalization and smart city through innovative business models and leveraging on TM's asset. And our final panelist is Mr. Bakhtiar Zainal Abidin. He is Malaysia Smart City Alliance Pro Tem member on finance. He is also the CEO of Sistem Perintis Sdn Bhd and is involved in system development, data management analytic, and data professional training program. Today, Mr. Azrin will be joining us from a workshop that he's conducting with Majlis Perbandaran Kelang. All right, so that's what you can see, a huge crowd there. Yeah. All right. In today's episode 7, we are discussing on public-private partnership, the funding of smart city development. Cities around the globe realize the need to streamline their infrastructure and system to improve the lives of their residents with the latest planning paradigm of smart city development. For example, ICT infrastructure elements such as fiber optic networks that laterally function across sectors to become the core attribute in overall smart city system. These fundamentals raise both opportunities and challenges for the city's authorities from funding and financing perspective. A clear version is necessary for a better collaboration and the sharing of risks and reward with the private sector. Public-private partnerships are an increasing preferred method for cities development. Regardless the business, human, and city collision as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, now require city to initiate new method in coping with the difficulties. A swift involving planning environment needs to happen. An integrated end-to-end plan is required to replicate operating scenario within all-inclusive financial model. This is because the effect of COVID-19 will remain and even expand further far beyond any given MCO period. Malaysia financial institutions must prepare to weather the inevitable economic slowdown and these inevitable effects. Also, all smart city development plan in the pipeline. Now, I would like to start asking Mr. Jeffrey. As we all aware, smart city stakeholders are growing with positive commitment from federal, state, and local levels. Marketplace is varied and complicated with the convergence of cross-cutting needs. Can you share with us the big picture of the public-private partnership globally and international example, especially on the funding models and practice as the cities over the globe face the mass COVID-19 pandemic aftermath? Mr. Jeff.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anusha. And it's a complex question. My name is Jeff. I'm from the World Bank. The World Bank is an organization that provides support and assistance to lower income countries, the various poorest countries in the world, but also to middle income countries. So a lot of countries that have very sophisticated approaches to problem solving. And in that context, I am a PPP specialist. So I run around the bank advising different teams and different sectors on how to do public-private partnerships. And for those of you not familiar with the terminology, it's a very simple concept. Public sector is good at some things, private sector is good at some things. And the two can come together and work together to solve problems using their respective strengths. And the idea is that if it's done right, then the sum is greater than the sum of its parts. So together they can be even better than they could be separately. Obviously, that's a really challenging thing. Anyone who's tried to build a joint venture or a partnership or a company, and bringing together even just individual people with different skill sets and getting them to work together is challenging. So I have a lot of work to do. I get to run around and advise lots of people. And I must say, working in cities and municipalities is one of my favorite things. When you work in a particular sector like power sector and you think about PPP, you think about power generation, power transmission, power distribution, all the different bits and pieces. But it's relatively linear. You're thinking about your sector. In cities, you guys have to think about everything all at once. Everything you do touches on so many different parts of the economy, of the social aspects of the city, of the political aspects of the city. you have to think about things more broadly. And so that's my number one bit of my first thought on PPP. To be good in PPP, you need to be flexible. You need to be able to think outside of the box. As governments, we look at things delivered publicly. So I'll work with the private sector, but I'm going to hire them to do a specific job. Build this building, manufacture a pencil and deliver me a pencil. It's relatively linear. But here in PPP, it's a relationship. You have to think about things in a much more dynamic fashion. And that can be difficult because often our rules internally are designed to keep us focused, to keep us tight, to spend public money efficiently. And what PPP demands really is that we open our minds and we think about the private sector as a partner. And part of that partnership is communicating, it's sharing, it's being open with this partner that you now have in ways that you're not usually open with a supplier or a contractor. But here it's a partner. And in smart cities, this is even more important, right? Smart cities is super innovative and creative and dynamic, and we're thinking of new ideas and new ways of doing things. We have to express to our private sector partners what we really want, our nervousness, our concerns, our issues, and then get the private sector to do the same. The private sector is equally as confused, equally as frustrated and nervous, right? And they're risk averse, and all of this stuff is happening, and they're working with a partner that they don't really understand. Private sector is as confused about government as government sometimes is about what drives private sector. So that partnering is really, really important to make a PPP successful. And I guess last is specialist skills. It's often tempting as a city government to act like we already know everything, like we know what we're doing, and we need to be confident, and that confidence is really important, right? There's nothing, walking into a meeting with strong confidence allows everyone else to relax. But in that confidence, we need to be honest about where we need help, where we need support. And there are going to be a series of technical specialisms that you may not have internally, and which means bringing some of those specialisms from the outside. And sometimes that can be difficult. But again, flexibility. We need to be open-minded. We need to be bringing in these technical specialists to help. And so whether that's legal, whether that's commercial, drafting up contracts, thinking about what's driving the project commercially, finance. On the financial side, sometimes PPP can be quite complex financially because we're asking financing to come into a long-term project, not just build me a house, but now it's going to be a long-term provision of solutions. And so that technical specialism is going to be really important. And being open to bring those specialists in, but also watching them very carefully. Specialists, just like everybody else, they have their own way of doing things, and they need help understanding what you need, and having that confidence to stand with them and to help them understand and to push them to deliver what you need delivered. So let me stop there, but those are my three big things: flexibility, partnership, and then being open to bringing in that specialist support to help you deliver. So that would be my opening salvo, Anusha.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we understand that city need to touch on everything, and to have it to be good in PPP, we need to be much more flexible. All right, and yes, we need to address the demand from the private sector. You nail it right. All right, now I would like to go to Town Planner Hajan Nuraini. The Subang Jaya Municipal Council has the vision to become an international renowned city based on the smart city, business city, and ideal resident by 2030. MPSJ is one of the successful municipal which is able to sustain with minimum government funding. How does MPSJ address the challenges on funding and financing model to carry out the smart city projects or initiative?
Thank you, Danisha.
Yes.
Thank you, Anusha. Sorry, but Danisha is my neighbor's daughter.
No problem.
Okay,
Please, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everybody. Subang Jaya, like any city in Malaysia or all over the world, aspires to become a smart city. I think that's become the tagline for all cities nowadays. And Malaysia has launched this smart city framework that every city can refer to on how to initiate, how to progress along with your program and strategies towards becoming a smart city. But how do we actually achieve it? I mean, saying it, putting it in a strategic plan, putting it in our local plan is one thing, but implementing it is another thing. And the first questions that always comes to every city is about the affordability. Can we afford to be smarter? Aren't we smart already? Or how smarter can we be? And who can help us to be smarter? So I think in approaching these questions on our journey to become a smart city, one thing that I can say is that we cannot do it alone. We do need partners. And in choosing our partners, we need to know them better. We need to know that they understand our problem. And anybody who comes with a business proposal to a local council not only come because they are there to make money, but to also provide a solution to alleviate the pain points that the city residents are experiencing. And most importantly, that the project is feasible and sustainable. So, for a city, almost all of us have our own strategic plan. And for Subang Jaya, we have smart city as one of the core strategies. What do we try to achieve by saying that to be smarter? It's all about a faster and more efficient service delivery. How do we smartize our work process? How do we make it more efficient? How do we make it better? How do our decision making can be done better with all the data, with all the information, with all the analytical ability, with this new AI? But how do we adopt that into our daily decision making? So that is number one. It's all about a better governance, a more efficient governance, a better service delivery. In order to do that, you must understand what are the pain points. I mean, I'm talking about partners who wish to be partners with us. I mean, you don't come with a proposal because it's what you can do, but what is its use to the city. Okay, partners may have various solutions and they are good at selling, but do we want to buy it? Every city have to decide whether that is the solution that we want, giving the amount of money that we have. Okay, I'm talking about affordability again. Identifying our pain points, that has to be done by the city itself. The smart city framework done by the Kementerian Perumahan dan Kerajaan Tempatan have already guided us on which areas that we need to focus on. I mean, we will go to smart economy, we will go for smart living, smart environment, smart people, smart government, smart mobility, smart digital infrastructure. But out of all that, which one do you want to focus on? In Subang Jaya, we go back to the people. What are their pain points? What are their wishes? Which priority that they want to see done within this year, next year, and the next year? Because normally strategic plans will take for 5 years to be planned and to be implemented. So once we have prioritized these pain points, we need to identify the right partner to provide the right solution, because the ability of officers within the local government itself are limited. We are burdened with daily process. Sometimes we do not have enough manpower to think about the way to do things better. Just by coping on daily things, we are so overwhelmed already. So there comes partners, people coming to you with proposals. And the first question that I would ask is, do you understand what we are doing, what we are trying to to ease the problems of the citizens. And if you have a solution, how can we afford it? I have one example. I mean, Azrin is here from TM. We have a collaboration in SS15. It is for three things in one. We're trying to have a safer city, more women friendly. Secondly, we have a proposal for a smarter mobility to ease the traffic so that the waiting time at the traffic light won't be too long, so that we can synchronize a few traffic lights using a smarter solution. And in order to afford that, we have this smart parking system that can increase our revenue by 20-30%. So this is one example of a partnership that understands what we need and provide a good business model that will enable us to afford the system. So so do example with other partners. I'm partnering with Smart Selangor Delivery Unit and also Smart Cells. They provide the integrated system for our domestic waste and cleaning services. They are also helping us with the smart traffic management system. They are also coming with the integration of the complaint system and the action that is being done on the ground so that we can see it in our command center. And this system can be financed through this collaboration because we have a way of financing it later. In the beginning, with the Selangor government, of course, they will sponsor some, but eventually we would have to afford it. And increasing revenue through this smart system is one example. Again, with SSDU, we go through smart parking. And there are other collection revenues. For example, a payment online, which can become a new source of income for local authorities with another partner. The third message that I want to send out today is that a local authority doesn't have to have a lot of money to start to on their journey towards smart city. My command center cost me only 500,000. It's a renovation of the old usage. And we combine it with our call center, we combine it with the monitoring station, we combine it with the CCTV room. So now it has become one room where we can see our integrated system. We integrate that with the executive information system that have the map and the overlays of all the cities. And now we have combined it with the movement of our vehicles coming soon. But now we are starting with the enforcement on the ground so that we can communicate with them better. So, Anusha, if I can reiterate again, one, that we cannot do it alone, we do need partners. And as a guide, just look at the framework that the KPKT have provided us, it will be on a good path. And thirdly, the partners need to come with a business model that makes it affordable for all of us. Maybe I should stop there first, Anusha.
Thank you, Madam. All right. You have a good point that implementing is the most important part in developing smart cities development, and a good planning is required. And how you spend your budget and how you fulfill what's required for your city. You need to prioritize, which is right. And there's another point that you said, we cannot be alone. We need partners heading the pathway towards smart cities. And with partner, you can deliver things faster and smarter way. Our next panelist is Madam Maslinawati. Smart city development require external funding or investment, which acquire both public and private sector to have good collaboration and partnership. Can you share any funding model suitable for industry and municipal on smart city development? Ms. Maslina.
Hi, good morning. I'm Maslina. Basically, I'm not the operations person, yeah, to talk about credit and funding models and things like that. I'll be speaking as an economist, plus wearing the hat of this Bank Pembangunan Malaysia. Okay, so being a bank, we are acting like an intermediary, no matter what kind of funding models you have, because I believe different projects, different locations, different types of what do we call this? It's going to be a medium term, a long term initiative, and whatever. You will require different types of models, and there are a lot of funding models for this. Okay, it's just not PFI or private finance initiative or privatization. There are a lot more to that in recent years. Okay, so as a bank, we are just acting as intermediary. We are linking these partners, the public sector and the private sector. Yeah. So at Bank Pembangunan, we don't have specific funds allocated or dedicated per se just for smart cities. Okay. As we know, smart cities is actually an interconnection of uh, digitization to serve the people, to improve the transport modes, communications, utility services, and etc., towards building this smart city. So we can see that it cut across many sectors. Okay, but of course, being a smart city, the ultimate goal is to achieve sustainable development. Yeah. So uh, when we approach the credit, what do you call this, required for this kind of projects, the way we approach these projects are just the same as any other sectors. Okay, with the exception of two things. Okay, um, during the budget 2019, the government has announced specific funds to be, what do you call this, to be disbursed by Bank Pembangunan, which is Industrial Digitalization Transformation Fund, and the other one is Sustainable Development Funds. Okay, so as we can see, smart cities related projects, they fall either between these two types of funds. Okay, digitalization or sustainable development funds. So if the private sector approaching us or the public sector approaching us for funding, and if these projects falls within this any of these funds, they will be eligible for 2% subsidy, okay, from the financing rate. Okay. On top of that, if it's related to public sector, for example, the PBT, pihak berkuasa tempatan, on top of that, we will have a special, what do you call this, financing rate for them. Instead of charging them base financing rate, we will charge them at cost of funds. Okay, so that is the exception, the what you call this, the advantages or the special privileges given to public sector. And if it's digitalization or sustainable development related projects, then they will get additional 2% subsidy. Okay, because it's under government budgeted funds. Okay. So, for example, just to share with you two projects that Bank Pembangunan is financing currently. One is the smart parking project. That one is, I think, is in Penang. That one is for Majlis Bandaraya Pulau Pinang and Majlis Perbandaran Seberang Perai. Okay, that's one thing. Another one is the replacement of the street lights. Okay, they are changing it to the solar LED lights, and this one is under the Majlis Bandaraya Shah Alam. So those two, one example of projects that Bank Pembangunan is financing. So again, I'm saying that we are just an intermediary. Okay, we don't think that there is what do you call this, a specific funding model that is actually fit size for every project. Okay, so it depends on the location, on the type of projects, whether it's a long term or medium term, what kind of initiatives does it involve, whether it's really costly, whether it's a PFI better or privatization better. It all depends on the type of projects. Okay, so you're just intermediary. What I can share with you is that we have all these funds. We can help you. Okay, so if you have progressive pattern, you have special rate. And if it's digitalization related, digitalization project or sustainable development projects related to smart cities, you have the 2% subsidy. Okay. Anusha, back to you.
Thank you, Lynn. Looks like there are a few other options of funding from Bank Pembangunan, which will be beneficial for the municipals in Malaysia and also industry players. And basically, I understand that Bank Pembangunan doesn't specify any funding model, but the funding types will be beneficial, right? And yes, it's good that now you have let me just recap, industrial digitalization funding and sustainable development funding,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Now I'd like to move on to Mr. Azrin, and he's live from the workshop at the Majlis Perbandaran Kelang. The growth and
Hello.
Hi. All right. The growth and performance of smart city project needs substantial investment that are difficult to fund within the existing financial model. In this situation, public-private partnership seems to be the appropriate to beat the scarcity of public finance and cut on the public spending. From your experience, can you share with us some of TM's public-private partnership model and example of collaboration with municipal in developing smart city initiative? Mr. Azrin, please.
Thank you, Anusha. Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone. Just to share a little bit, TM is no stranger to PPP. We started in the early of 2000, where Telecommunication and the government of Malaysia embarked on a PPP program to bring the nation from copper-based communication into fiber. I believe that everyone knows the HSBB project is one of the mega projects that TM and the government of Malaysia has embarked in the early of 2000. But what I would like to share today, PPP is not only for mega projects, not only for core infrastructure, but we can also bring that closer to the community, closer back to the municipalities or the PPTs. Okay, bringing that into context of our seminar or webinar today, actually today I am in a hall together with 24 council members of Majlis Perbandaran Kelang. Just to share with you, what we are trying to achieve is to really make PPP successful between a private and public sector. Okay, let me just recap what Jeffrey has said before. When we go into PPP, we have to be flexible. Right? I heard about thinking outside of the box, right? I heard about the process has to be different. I heard about communication. I heard about bringing in all these subject matter experts. And then when it comes to Puan Hajah Nuraini, the private needs to really understand, right, what the private or the PPT wants. Not only just bringing in products, right, but to really bring in a solution. When we talk about solution, it is not like, okay, here's a product, please pay me, right? Those are vendor and customer kind of relation, which is the traditional way of doing things, right? But when we talk about PPP, it's purely about partnership, right? For example, MPJ and myself, when Hajan Raini and myself, I spent like 1.5 years just to really understand what does it need to bring MPJ or any municipal to a certain level, right? So the same thing that we are doing today with MPK, to really understand the requirements of a Kelang, so that instead of just us from TM just bring a solution here, this is what I have, right? But what do we really need? Okay, what will be the most impactful project that can benefit the people of Kelang, for example, in our workshop today, right? So coming back to the question of funding, right? So this is where the challenges of any municipal. To start on a smart city project, you need fund. Okay, normally the normal way of getting fund is to request from external. But the question is, what happens if the fund exhausted, right? So for example, you start on the project of smart traffic light. Okay, the requirement of that project is, let's say, 1 billion. And we managed to get 1 million ringgit of fund from external, be it from the government or be it from the banks, for example, right? Okay, what happened after that? The moment we start to run the service, there's always what I call the maintenance of the project, and there's no more fund. So that is where all this initiative, all the good intention of the PPTs fits. So this is where TM, we come in not only to bring in products, but a total of solution, right? Covering the not only the solution, but also the business model. So how do we do that? Is first we need to really understand what types of services that we really want, right? So in this case, what we do is there's always two type of services in any municipal. There are services that are what I call a cost-driven services. There are services that revenue-generated services, right? So what, by understanding these two type of services, what we're trying to do is to increase or optimize the cost of the services that are using fund, okay, and to optimize the services that are generating fund. So the incremental of revenue that we're getting and the reduce of cost that we are saving, those two, we take it out and put into what we call a smart city fund for that particular municipal. So with that fund that we can generate continuously, we use that to subsidize new services that we are trying to introduce to for the benefit of the people of that local, in this case, MP Kelang or MPSG. Right. So when you ask about what are the examples that we are doing, those are the two examples that we are working today. From Telecom, working together closely with MP Kelang and also MPSG. Right. Back to you, Anusha.
Thank you, Mr. Azrin. It was very clear. All right. We understand that public-private partnership is on a mega project, and it can implement in a small project of smart city with a proper model, progress, and players. Right. So, of course, there will be issue when the funding is exhausted, but based on your planning that you have, I think that will be a good example for other private sectors and municipal to follow the lead. All right. Now, I would like to go to Mr. Bhatia, our final panelist. Smart cities are more than conventional physical infrastructure. Cities must embrace a diversity of methods to finance smart city projects. It is important to recognize different set of funding models. Is there any funding model or models that city authorities in Malaysia may find useful or can be applied? Mr. Bhatia?
Thank you, Anusha. Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera to all. Yes, a very interesting question. Okay, a bit of my background. I'm representing Nation Smart City Alliance, which is a body which consists of a lot of private organizations that actually provide services and developments to a host of government sectors and also private sectors. And we come in model all sorts of models. So my view here is basically coming from the private sector view. I hope it applies to the municipal council authorities when they apply for financing. But anyway, there are several funding models that can be adopted by hopefully city authorities. But first and foremost, as I think as we heard from other panelists, that we have to ascertain the business model and the nature of funding that's required. For example, a traditional sort of environment, which is the build, operate, and transfer model, is a traditional outright purchase model, which is obtained by contract awards. And this is actually funding which is coming directly from public sector. And the project is normally short term, between 1 to 5 years, and is fully transferred back to the municipal council once project is completed. In this scenario, the contract financing and project financing is adequate for the implementation of the project, of which the release of funding will be depending on certain timelines which have been agreed by both parties, by the municipal council and also private sector. That's one of the models that we have. The second model is more related to managed services model. Here again, a lot of this is basically providing services only to the municipal council. In this kind of scenario, the private sector will have to invest fully on the system first before it is being, and the municipal council will only pay according to services rendered. Now, this is normally a situation whereby the contract period will be a lot more longer, maybe between 5 to 15 years, in order to regain back the investment cost and probably a reasonable profit also at the end of the day. Here, the requirement is probably of like a long-term lease, basing on the portfolio of the company and also on the project information. Now, the risk is fully to the vendor. So the potential income and revenue growth is key in getting the potential financier or investor to join partner who can also co-benefit from the information obtained from data and services. Okay. The final one, which we are talking about today, is the public-private partnership model. This is basically a joint public and private investment. On the other hand, it involves investment from both vendors, which is private, and municipal council, which is public. And the proceeds from the project is to be shared by both parties. Now, here the key thing here is to actually be able to monetize the benefits of the social economy, which we hope to deliver in the project itself. So it's very important to ensure the success of investment and to realize the value it can bring for both parties. Now, if the growth and income can be shown, then it will be enticing for a better public-private partnership in the long run. So those are basically my thoughts on this. Anusha, back to you.
Thank you, Bhaktia. All right. We understand that there are several funding that we need to understand the business model, and the funding basically based on the time period and focusing on long-term or short-term project. And I think that will be a good options for industry players and also municipal. The key important is to increase the value for both parties in toward the success of the smart city development. All right. Thank you, Bhaktia. All right. Now I have some key question and some I received from the audience also via YouTube. All right. I would like to ask Mr. Azrin first. All right. What are the necessary preconditions for PPPs to be more widely applied in smart city development, especially in the light of accelerated urgency in technology application in many aspects of human life post-COVID?
Okay, basically, the core of PPP is all about within itself is partnership. When you talk about partnership, it is the willingness of both party to actually share the gain, the revenue, but at the same time, the willingness to share the risk. Of course, in the case of what we are trying to do today with Majlis Perbandaran Kelang, is actually to understand atau memahami apakah risiko-risiko yang bakal kita hadapi, right? So I'm sorry, I'm trying to have this dual.
Yes, okay.
For the benefit of people inside the session. Right?
It's fine. It's fine.
Right. Okay, so apabila kedua-dua pihak or both parties understand the risk, okay, whether it's the revenue that we are going to get or the risk that we are going to face, then only a good business model we can build. Kita boleh bina satu business model yang lebih baik. Okay, bila kita ada satu business model yang lebih baik, dan kita tahu apa risikonya, dan kita telah jalankan study seperti mana yang kami jalankan di MPSJ, okay. So we have done a study in MPSJ for 6 months in terms of parking, untuk memahami what are we going to get if let's say we run this technology for 6 months. And based on the study, then we know that if let's say we put this technology on, this will be the gain, this will be the revenue. Okay, now based on that, kita juga cuba fahami, okay, what if we get that 100%, 80%, 50%, 60%, what will be the value that we are going to get? How much are we willing to share in order to cross-subsidize to different projects? So this is what I believe what Jeffrey said. PPP needs a lot of communication. This is also what Puan Hajan already said, that we need to really understand. So all this are the core of PPP. It's all about partnership. Bila kita bercakap tentang partnership, kita tak boleh nak pergi dari segi the normal procurement way. So there's a tender, but of course there are governance. But we need to find ways to make PPP work. Okay, right? So.
Thank you. Madam Maslinawati, what do you think about it? You on mute.
Sorry, because of the COVID-19, the whole world, not just cities or Malaysia, the whole world, we are actually being pushed towards the acceleration of adoption of the technology. But with regards to planning for smart cities, because I think we are still at the early stage of having all these things together. So don't just like because it's technology and COVID-19, you just bulldoze and you just focus on technology adoption and whatnot. Because you really have to take stock of what you have for your cities. Because as I mentioned, different cities, different requirements, different kind of framework. So you cannot just have one size fits all. Yeah. So basically, you have to look at what are the things that the cities need first, okay? And if you want to put in technology, or if you want to accelerate the adoption of technology, because basically technology is the key thing underpinning this smart cities design, you have to make sure that you have the proper infra first. Secondly, you need to make sure that the transformation, among businesses towards this digitalization, towards automation, is it in place yet or not? Because you can't have, you just throw in what do you call this, infra such as technology, and it's not being embraced, it's not being adopted widely. I think in a way, the objective, defies the purpose, okay? So that's the key thing. You need to take stock what your cities need, okay? Of course, you have to align to whatever is actually already being laid out by Kementerian Perumahan in their smart cities framework. And you should prioritize things that are actually more needed first, not just what you call this, the adoption of high-end technology just to keep pace, with whatever other people is doing just because of this COVID-19. So yeah, so because when talking about PBT, we're talking about small Majlis Perbandaran, not just Majlis Bandaraya, not just like cities like MBSA or Subanjaya, or you really have to look in a perspective for the whole nation. Okay, so to make sure that, because even if you manage to develop one smart city within, let's say, Subanjaya or Shah Alam, and you are sort of disconnected with the other cities or the other small towns in Selangor, then tak guna juga, So you need to have the whole ecosystem actually, they grow together, whichever whoever is at the, what do you call this, at the faster end of this phase of digitalization or smart sustainable development projects, whatever, go ahead. But you need to allow these small towns to catch up as well. So yeah, back to my earlier statement just now, you really have to take stock You really have to look at what are the needs, the urgent needs of your cities. Maybe your cities need replacement of street lights first before looking at what you call this e-commerce and connecting all the people in the cities and whatnot, things like that. So we cannot just be blinded by just because of COVID-19 acceleration of technology. So you just bulldoze into technology. So yeah, that's my insights into this. Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn. Right, my next question. What is the financial landscape of municipal and industry player in supporting smart city development? Town Planner Haja Nuraini, maybe you can take up this question.
This is the most difficult question to all local authorities. We want to do a lot of things. We want to be smarter, but we can't afford it. I mean, the questions about affordability can be answered. Like Maslina said before, it is prioritizing. What is it that you really need that will help your city the most? Not just because the neighbors have it, the Joneses have it, not because the big cities have it and the smaller cities want to have it too, but what are the most pertinent issues that needs to be resolved within that city? Prioritize that. And how to do it? You can't do it alone. Select a good partner. How do we know that a partner is a good partner? I mean, it's like a marriage. Like, I mean, you get to know them for quite a while, but in the long run, it's quite a gamble. But assessing your partner needs some assessing of yourself also. Suppose we are to embark in a project. Once we have prioritized it, we have to embark upon it. The way Subang Jaya does it is to have this living lab. I mean, with the project proponent, I want you to show me that this project is doable and sustainable, given a short period of this trial time. Okay, 6 months, do it on the ground. We want to see what's the problems with the solution, whether it can be improved. But at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to know each other. And of course, doing due diligence of that particular companies. I mean, if it's TM, for example, when everybody knows them, it is a big company, it's a government-backed company, so it's not so much a problem. But there are many companies who are proposing to change your LED light, saying that they can change all of them, the whole city, and we don't have to pay a single cent for the next how many years. I was very skeptical of that proposal from many years ago because technology changes very fast, and the way they package it is that the payment that is paid by the saving from the utility bill will extend for over 20 years, which is, I said, this is ridiculous. After 6 or 7 years, the technology changes itself, and you may not even be there to change it, but we still have to pay you. We made some mistake before with the CCTV camera. We paid a large amount of money for what is now good for, I can buy a new camera every month for what I have been paying for the past how many years. Mistakes like that should not be done. Of course, sometimes we are asked to do things, but if local authority have their own say on doing things, you should know what you can afford. You should know what to spend on the best with the limited resources that you have. Given a project, you see what the cash flow looks like in line with the technology lifespan, because a technology can only last a certain years. Nowadays, these LED companies come with a new proposal saying that it is affordable to be paid within 5 to 7 years. I'm happy because within that period of time, technology changes, the bulb itself, the housing, the whatever technology that goes with LED would have changed, and whether the company that exists or not, at least I have overrun the warranty period and the time that I need to maintain the particular item. We are talking about infrastructure. You need to know the product, who produces it, whether it is a solid company who are producing it, whether the maintenance is going to be okay or not. If you're talking about a system, a system can be too complicated, which we don't really need. What we need is a simple solution on the ground. I'm talking about to my staff this morning that have this wonderful system, but in actuality, when the user use it, they only want certain things only. So in the end, we have to restructure that application to make it easier, simpler, and cheaper, which is actually what we need. So back to your question, Nisha. Understanding our own ability to pay for a certain project, understanding the lifespan of the project, selecting the right technology, compare it by all means. We can Google other cities around the world. What is the best solution? We can shop for the best items now without having to go abroad and compare it. So technologies are there. It's up to the management to decide. It's up to the leaders. This is where the leadership comes in.
Yeah.
You are the one who decide what is the best thing for your city right now, and what, when you leave behind, what are your legacy for the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you, Nisha.
All right, thank you. It's basically a good governance and due diligence, and what is the priorities for your city. Jeff, what is your take on this?
I thought those were fantastic interventions. I thought they were brilliant. And just to pick up on Norani's comment about PPP is like marriage. And my daughter is 12, and she is adorable and amazing and the most beautiful girl in the whole world. And thank God we're not quite to boys yet. But I try to teach her about what she wants to look for. And when a girl comes to you and says, "Oh, I've met this man and he's wonderful, he's so handsome." Well, does he have a job? Oh, but he's so handsome. Well, is he nice to you? Oh, but he's so handsome. It's so tempting when those vendors come into your office with this great solution, and it's, look at how exciting it is. It has all these buttons and it has all these different things it can do. And isn't this brilliant? And here, why don't you buy this from me? And that's not what you want. You want someone that's going to go with you for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and provide you with a solution as the technology changes. You don't want to be stuck with the same old thing. You want a partner that's going to see that things are going to change, and they're going to change with you. This is really hard to do, right? And which is why Azrin is sitting in his room with all of his huge audience in front of him and sharing all these dynamics and brainstorming about these things, because it's a constant relationship thing. And he mentioned just sitting with people, spending time with them, 1.5 years to develop this. And by the way, I'm very jealous. He's got that pop star microphone. I want to get one of those because that looks really cool. But it's that relationship, right? And you get that relationship by spending time. It's not somebody in a beautiful suit that comes into your office and drives a nice car and has this really whizzy, exciting thing. It's a relationship, and together we're going to build this thing. And as Azrin was saying, you share the revenues. So it's not just about, I want to make my money and I'm going to move on to the next country or the next city or whatever, the next project. It's about, together we're going to build this thing. And as it gets more efficient, as it gets better, we both win. And that also pushes the city, because we don't want to take the pressure off the city either, right? City temptation is to say, all right, I've got my PPP. I can leave that now because it's solved. I've got the LED lights for street lighting. The nice, simple solution. All right, you guys take care of that. I'm going to move on to something else. City can't do that. It's a partnership. So the city officials have to stay engaged. They've got to stay plugged in. They've got to keep pushing. And the partners have to push each other to continue to get better and better and better. And that's when that passion comes in. That's when that excitement comes in. And the team that you've got building this thing, there's also a tendency in government for us to put a good team together, and they're very, dynamic, and they're excited, and they've got these great skills, and they put the deal together, and then they move on to the next deal and the next deal and the next deal. Who's maintaining the first deal? Who's maintaining the second deal after it's been done? Right after we've all gotten excited and had a big party and we've got the deals done, hurrah, aren't we excited? And we put the note in the paper and we have the speeches. The day after is when the real work starts. Who's going to do that work? Who's going to stay committed to this thing? Who's going to stay embedded and bring it from success to success to success? It's a lot of work. but the potential is fantastic. And just sorry, and apologies to go back to the COVID question, which is massive at the moment, right? The economic impact of this thing is just setting aside the humanitarian, the social, the fear, the all the other yuck, right? Putting that aside, the economic impact is huge. So our tax revenues this year are going to be really bad. Next year, they're going to just be bad. Hopefully, the year after, they get back to okay, and then we get better and better. But in order to fill the gap, government is borrowing a lot of money, which is what they should do. They borrow a lot of money to fill the gap. That means that money needs to be paid back. So even after the revenues start coming back, our debt burden is going to be higher. That efficiency from smart cities is absolutely critical. The technology, all of that stuff is great. That's really important. But the efficiency you're looking for is huge. And that's how you're going to cut your costs, improve your revenues, improve the way your services are delivered. And that plus private sector bringing capital. That needs to be the order of priority. That efficiency, that partnership needs to come first. Bringing the money needs to come second. And fortunately, we have Maslin who's got all these fantastic funds and can come and help us finance these things, which is fantastic. Because if you're trying to stretch and get as much debt as possible, you're spending your energy and your focus on bringing in more debt. You're making the project more vulnerable. So it's got to be a nice balance between the two, and bringing those pieces together. And COVID is pushing us really hard over the next couple of years to really focus on this. It's going to be a massive task without as much money as we're used to, without as much resource to bring in the experts. So it's a tough time, but very exciting. Thank you.
Indeed, smart partnership is really required in order to overcome the current situation. All right, my next question. What are the issues and challenges in getting funding for smart city development? Mr. Bhatia, what's your take on this?
Hi. The funding implementation of smart cities in the future has always been an issue due to those following challenges. I would identify, first challenge is to actually identify the business model. What is suitable and will be able to attract private funding, right? And then there was a mention of a technology risk just now. That means to be able to get the project must first is one of its kind to be deployed with no proven track record, and implementation will be a challenge for investors or financiers to consider in the first place. And then, as I said earlier, you need to monetize the benefit. It's very difficult to identify the monetarily value of what can be delivered in terms of social economy. It is difficult to identify these benefits and communicate this from the system. So it's a very important factor that needs to be, and it's quite challenging. The other one is also actually to identify ascertaining the returns on investment. And for every project that you go in, you must be able to convince the financiers or investors that it is a sustainable project and it has potential growth. And again, the issue of benefiting the social society, the citizens of the city itself is also equally important. It has to be relevant to the citizens of that city, and it cannot be too technologically driven. It has to have that certain balance of relatedness and also technology. Of course, data is also equally important for the municipal councils or cities to consider, especially to be able to identify what would be the best strategic plan or moving forward plan that the city should focus on. Because you're right, cities have got a lot of issues that needs to be thought of. There are multi-factors that they need to consider. But with the data in hand, I'm sure they're getting a lot of data to be able to crunch and massage that data. They'll be able to know which area of focus is best to their interest. And different cities require different requirements to fulfill for the citizens. So I identify those challenges. Basically, as I said again, the business model. the technology risk, the difficulty in monetizing those benefits, and also to ascertain the returns on investment to each individual project. So these are the key things the challenges that to try to identify funding for smart cities. Thank you, Anusha.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bhatia. Town Planner Hajar Nuraini, do you face the same challenges as what mentioned by Bhatia?
Can you run that again, Anusha?
Okay. All right. The challenges that to get the funding, issues and challenges to get the funding for your development, smart city development. What are the issues, the critical issues that, yeah.
Every local authority have to do their budgeting. I mean, we have to do it now for next year. And normally we only plan what we can afford to pay because local authority in Malaysia are not encouraged to issue to have loans or issue bonds. I mean, we can't issue bonds. I mean, unless the state allows it. So mostly our projects are quite limited to what we can afford. This is where other local authorities may have that the inability of implementing their smart city plan is limited by the resources that they have right now. But suppose we are convinced enough that one project is desired enough and important enough for us to ask for loan. How do we get that loan? The first place that we would go to is to the State Department, to the state authority. The state may want to finance that project, but before that, some kind of credit rating must be done, whether you are liquid enough, whether you can afford to pay it in the future, because even with state, we don't ask from our parents, okay, give us some money, then they will give us just like that. No. In slang, you would have to prove that you can pay it. I mean, they may not charge you any interest rate. They may forgive your loan later, but in the beginning, you must convince that you have the ability to pay for it. So how do city decide that this is a project worth taking loan from any other parties? But what we have not done this far is asking loans from banks, which local authority very, very rarely do so. So this is where Mr. Bahtiar and Puan Mazlina May comes in, teaching us how to make a project bankable, because it's about documenting, it's about evaluating, it's about rating. Um, uh, just like as Azri said, there is the cost part to it and there is the revenue part to it. If the project is only of social benefit, of which we do not get back any revenue, then it is going to be quite difficult. No matter how much you monetize the social benefits, it's quite difficult to, in the end, to pay the bank later. So again, we cannot do it alone. Local authorities are too small in Malaysia, except a few who are loaded enough, like maybe our neighbor Shalam. But the rest of the local authorities have difficulty in financing their desired projects, the project that is important to them. And maybe it has come a time that certain banks and certain financiers come and look at the project and how we can afford that. Thanks, Anusha.
Okay, thank you, Puan. Miss Maslina. Miss Maslina, is it based on your experience, is it hard for a municipal to get a loan from the bank?
As I mentioned just now, I'm not in the operations side.
Okay.
So I don't really can speak on their behalf, or on behalf of this pihak berkuasa tempatan. But I think based on the financing facilities that we have extended thus far, it's actually via a private partner. So basically, I think the model is the private finance funding model. So it's basically through the vendor,
Okay.
and for PBT projects, okay. And I think because of the what do you call this, the special rates that we are giving to this kind of projects. I think in a way it's much better than, for if the, what do you call this, the vendor or the PBT themselves to get the loans from other banks, because this is actually specific. The ones that are actually being introduced under the budget 2019 is actually specifically just for Bank Pembangunan.
Right.
Yeah.
And basically, this is more to the public-private partnership model,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's private finance initiative. It's basically
All right.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Right. I have one question via YouTube for Town Planner Haja Nuraini. All right. Do we need to rate our financial strength in a bracket credit rating before deciding the right partner? Madam Haja Nuraini?
Okay, Anusha, our own ability to finance or to afford a project, I think is quite separate from the assessment of the partner itself. Okay, I think first we need to know ourselves before we engage with any partner. If we have decided that this is the project that we want and we want to finance it, whether through our own money that we have in our reserves or through bank loans or the state government loans, then majority of the decision is made already. But if we are doing it with partners and the partners have this PFI proposal, it will be financed by them, but we, in a way, either our revenue will pay for it later, or we can pay for it in an incremental manner over a long period of time. Still, we would have to know what are the costs that is borne by the partners, because eventually it will be burden to us. Whether it comes from the revenue created, it is to pay for whatever the cost that is said to be borne by the project proponent. So knowing the business model, the cost upfront, and knowing our our own affordability is very, very crucial before we embark on any project. Yes, credit rating is
Okay.
essential.
All right. So are you intend to do credit rating for MPSJ?
If we need to find loans, otherwise people don't need to know whether we are liquid enough or not. But it comes to time, and we have tested it before, and we are able to do so if we want to.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff, I have one question for you. When implementing public-private partnership for smart cities, what are some of the biggest challenges you face? And what are some of more creative solution you have found?
Creative. Actually, do you mind a quick comment on that credit rating question, which is a little bit of a warning?
Sure.
Is to manage that process very carefully, because you don't want a bad surprise. When you go through the process, you get the rating out the other side. You want to be able to manage that and manage the credit rating agencies that you provide the right information. You might actually want to do a shadow rating or something first, just so that you know what your gaps are, where your weaknesses are, so you can improve them. So when you do get the rating, it comes out positive and very nice, a nice thing, a very useful thing. As far as creative solutions, we work on all kinds of really fun stuff around the world. And I guess one thing that I would encourage your audience is, when you're thinking about smart city solutions and when you're thinking about PPP, don't forget that in addition to the immediate service you are providing, your solution and your PPP might be able to mobilize other revenues. Let me give you a very, very simple example. When you're a government and you're thinking about building a bus station, right? And I know I've got buses coming into town. The buses are parking all over the place. It's a mess. I need to build a bus station. So when government thinks about bus station, they think, all right, I need to spend $10 million. to build a bus station. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to budget that amount. I'm going to build the bus station. A private partner, when you bring that partner in, sees the bus station, but they see customers. All these people are going to come to the bus station and I can provide them with all these services. So let's give them this service and that service and this service and that service. And then you make a lot of money off the bus terminal. So that terminal can actually be a source of revenue rather than just cost. And this is very true for public markets and other things. Make sure that you stay focused on the public service, but don't forget all the other opportunities. And so when you're creating your, especially a service platform, an IT app platform for municipal services, there are a lot of ways of using that same platform to then make money, make other revenues with advertising, definitely, but also with a lot of other services that you can provide over that platform. They may be great services, ones that everybody wants to use, really important. And then you also bring in new revenue streams that then can help you pay for the fundamental public service that was really the focus in the first place. But again, don't forget to focus on the fundamental service. It's so easy. We do this a lot with airport projects, for example. You go to build an airport and the airport's very exciting, but actually the land around the airport is really, really exciting because there you can build office parks and IT parks and industrial parks, all focused on the airport, and they'll make a lot of money. But there's a tendency when you bid out a PPP for an airport for the team that bids to focus more on the land than it does on the airport. And that's a disaster. When the team that you bring in, your partner, is no longer worried about your airport, they're worried about making lots of money off of land. And that doesn't work. So it's a tricky balance, but that would be my suggestion is, again, open-minded, flexibility, think about other ways of making money, and your private partner can be really helpful with this. Just make sure that they are aligned with your interests.
Thank you, Jeff. Bhaktia, what do you think, in your opinion, how can a public-private partnership can be adapted for a funding, to secure a funding? Mr. Bhaktia? You're on mute. All right.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Now, I believe in order to establish a public-private partnership, the first thing that that was mentioned earlier, you have to have a corporate identity in order to be able to apply for funding, finance for that matter. So I think one of the things that should be considered is for a special purpose vehicle to be established. This special purpose vehicle is probably a private limited company that's having representative equity shareholdings from both the private and public sector. So what it means is that the public sector and private sector is required to place an investment to the company. Investments can be in the form of either assets or technology know-how or cash for that matter. Normally it will be a 50-50 ratio with equal risk sharing both by the public and the private sector. But then that depends on if you want to allow who would want to hold a majority of equity. It can be either the private sector, which will hold more, or the public sector, which will hold more. So depending on which party wants to hold better control of the project. Now, in terms of having this SPV, they will have all the rights to and obligations to the project, and will assume that all cash flows, assets, liabilities related to that will be channeled through the SPV, special purpose vehicle. Now, taking that into consideration, there are several areas where the financing models for PPP can be considered. One which we consider a project-based or equity financing model. Now, this is basically looking at the project itself, the value of it, and what it can be delivered, and also looking at the amount of investment or equity that's in place by the SPV to make it having a better financial standing, and to be able to apply to a private financier, which will consider them as a private entity, and of course having a sign or a project which has already been awarded or agreed with the municipal council. Okay, and then another area, of course, with this equity financing, of course, if there is an asset inside the SPV company, then they will probably have to use the asset as security, as an example. It can be also based on the project itself, where the project can show some viability for the financiers to consider to place as funding, provide funding. Now, the other area is like what was mentioned earlier, was public co-finance. That means it's a form of public grant financing, which is actually funding coming from the government sector. But there is a shortfall in this, as indicated earlier. It depends on the budget that is available in order to complete the project. If you have limitations in budget, then there are certain projects might not be able to provide, or you not be able to complete the whole what you hope to achieve, but you might want to go case by case, which will take a longer time. So there's some shortfalls in it. Now, the other one which was also mentioned was actually private funding initiative model, whereby the company itself identifies solely how to, like I said, monetize the benefits of the project itself, to see how, again, the demand for the society itself, the citizen itself, to be able to use the product that is provided and be able to benefit. For example, there was mention of public parking just now. Now, it benefiting in the sense that you are able to find your spot before even arriving at the area, or the system can also identify where you should drive to in order to get parking. So it tells you, and it minimizes the wastage of time for you to go around looking for parking. So these are benefits. And if it improves the lifestyle of the citizens, I'm pretty sure they will come in on board and be able to also participate in the program. So it opens a lot of doors of opportunity in terms of advertising and information sharing. And for the municipal council, we will also be able to identify if they're falling short of parking lots, or they have room for further developments that need to be done, or better management of traffic flow, for that matter. So there are a lot of improvements that can be made. So all this, if you can identify and be able to monetize and be able to project it to the financiers, then you'll be able to not just depend on equity, you can just depend on the project itself to be able to get funding. And it's just long term. It's not 1 to 3 years, but more like 15 to 20 years, so that they can have better returns on investment. So these are the areas I feel that some of the factors that we should adopt it for PPPs. Okay, thank you, Anusha.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bhatia. Yes, a lot of work had need to be put in order to prepare a good proposal, and not only that, a creativity and a good funding background, credibility of the company also required in order to convince the investors or municipal to take up the project. All right, my final question I have for Haja Noraini, right? For a city that does not have much experience with public-private partnership, how would you suggest they start? And what are some of the key early work that needs to be done to improve likelihood of the success?
Okay, we are not alone. We have our Malaysian Association of Local Authority, we have our Kementerian Perumahan Kerajaan Tempatan, and of course we have our state government to help us in structuring for project feasibility, the municipality's credit rating, and whether to take up that particular project or not. if any city feels that they lack the information, I mean, there is this network among us that we can always ask each other. And I believe now with the exposure to Cik Batia, Puan Mazlina, we can also ask our partners in the financial sector to advise us. I mean, Jeffrey has always been there. United Nations are always willing to help. Internationally, we have UCLG, we have UN Habitat, we have ASCAP, my own PEMC, PNLG networking. There's a lot of networkings out there that we can take advantage of, and specifically asking questions. If you ask Jeffrey alone, I mean, he can channel you to so many people that can ask specifically and even help you towards this process. It's our willingness to be humble enough and ask. I mean, it's not difficult. Help is out there. We are not alone. That's my message.
You're right about that. It's just we have to work as a partnership. Jeff, would you want to add on this?
What could I possibly add? I thought that was brilliant, and I think the willingness to ask is so important, and not just of the World Bank and Asian Development Bank and so many other groups around who have resource, but also internally within government, within amongst your colleagues. You got already in this session with Mike, you got a really great session of all this expertise that exists in Malaysia. You guys are very spoiled, frankly. In most of the countries that I work in, you don't have this. People are really scrambling. They have no one to sit next to them and help them through these problems. So, it's not easy. It's not, I don't want to belittle the challenge, but I think you guys are in a really nice position to reach out around you and get a lot of support and make this a big success.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. We are almost ending our session. All right. We can conclude that public-private partnership is very important in creating a clear vision for a better collaboration between public and private sector. City authorities and industry players should break the silo and the traditional barriers for getting the funding and financing source for smart cities development. The responsibility of city authorities related to the possibility of implementing the public-private partnership model in regards with the realization of the new and alternative ways of funding for smart cities development. Federal, state, and local government will increasingly encounter new partnership model for investment and revenue sharing. Also, for the private sector, they will expect to participate in long-term upside and downstream implementing opportunities. As a result, the private sector should encourage public sector investing in smart city development. With all this information and fruitful sharing by our panelists, we are able to open our thoughts and views for both cities, authorities, and industry players to find better solutions in financing smart city development. Thank you to our fellow panelists for today's discussion. I hope today's talk has benefited all. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar session. Please follow us on Might Malaysia's Twitter, IG, Facebook, and website for further information. You can also contact the Secretariat to subscribe to Might's webinar series. Have a nice day ahead. Thank you, everybody.
Sayang anak Malaysia, sayang anak Malaysia, sayang anak Malaysia, sayang anak Malaysia. Whoa, oh, whoa, whoa, oh, whoa. Hey. Whoa, oh, whoa, whoa, oh, whoa. Hey.
1957 bulan 8 kita merdeka.
Setelah dijajah oleh orang Inggris,
Kamikaze dan Portugis.
Whoa, oh, whoa, whoa, oh, whoa. Hey. Whoa, oh, whoa, whoa, oh, whoa. Hey.
Dari Perlis ke kota Kinabalu, rakyat bersatu dan maju.
bumi bertuah, hasil melimpah.
Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Wow, oh, 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 oh. Wow, oh, 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 oh.
Melayu, Cina, Iban, India,
Kadasan Portugis pun ada.
semua kaya dengan budaya.
Di bawah kibaran satu bendera.
Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia. Saya anak Malaysia.
Hujan emas di negeri orang,
Hujan batu di negeri kita. Walaupun cantik negeri orang,
Tentunya Malaysia cantik lagi.
Melayu, Cina, Iban, India, Kadasan Portugis pun ada. Semua kaya dengan budaya, di bawah kibaran satu bendera. Saya anak Malaysia. 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 Saya